So worship to me is a very central part of my life, or I try to make it a very central part of my life. And I heard this quote by a saint that said, pray without ceasing. And I really try and practice that in my day-to-day life, whether I'm actually sitting down and having intentional prayer time or whether I'm driving or walking along the beach. I just try and have this constant conversation with God. Really just builds that relationship, even if we're talking about the silliest little things. So Deus was written in a day, but there's so much that we were able to pack into that day. The song is all about God's mercy and his forgiveness. And when we were writing it, we were thinking of it as a song you could listen to before or after reconciliation. So thinking about all of the weight that's been taken off our shoulders when God forgives us and when we go and we ask. And it talks about these two sides of God, as God being this all-powerful and mighty King of heaven who, creates these incredible things and does amazing things. And then this other crucified Jesus who came down for us and humbled himself so that we could have this relationship with him and that we could be forgiven. So it's talking all about this journey through reconciliation and then that feeling of freedom. The first verse immediately introduces this idea of God's mercy and how it's so unfathomable and it's completely endless for us. And it's just talking about how amazed we are at how merciful God is and how much he loves us. When Jesus comes to all of the disciples and Thomas doubts and says, unless I can put my fingers in his hands and in his side, then I won't believe. And when he actually does, he announces my Lord and my God. And I really think of this line because of Jesus crucified for us and his scars in his hands for us as well as Thomas. And the fact that this great and all-powerful God has come down to have a relationship with us and so we can be forgiven. It's like his beautiful hands that he, created the heavens with are now actually scarred for our sake. So in the second verse, it talks a little bit more about the sacrament of reconciliation and God's mercy and how it's like a blank slate after we go to reconciliation. It's like everything's been wiped clean and we can begin again. And that's kind of what that lyric is about being able to be reconciled and to be clean and to walk away without this weight on our shoulders. So the title, it's kind of a funny story. We weren't sure what to call it at first. We had no idea. We just knew it was about mercy and forgiveness, but we had no idea where to go from there. And I remember Chloe mentioned that there was this word, Deus, and it meant God or deity in Latin. And I think in the Indo-European translation, it means celestial or golden. So we thought this just fit perfectly, and it's a great sum of God for us and who God is to us. So the bridge is repeated solely to basically reinforce the message. And I know for me sometimes that I have to repeat something over and over again before it actually sinks in. So by having the lyrics repeated over and over again, the you still love me, it's like a reminder of God's love for us and how it never ends. And it's more like it's trying to sink in even more that even though we can hurt his heart, he still loves us regardless. This song means a lot to me. It just reminds me of all of the times when I might have sinned or done something wrong and I just feel this shame and this regret and this guilt from what I've done. And sometimes it's a bit scary to go to God after that and feel unworthy or, that I'm not good enough to go and talk to God about this. And this song is just a reminder of how God's mercy is always there and it's always free for us. And I know that when I go to reconciliation and then I leave again, it's just this feeling of this weight off my shoulders and this blank slate that I can start again and begin again with God. And it just reminds me of that. So I do come from a musical family and I was introduced to music as a very young kid from a young age, and I'd grown up doing music lessons in singing and piano, and then I taught myself guitar at 13. And I remember I'd never really known worship music was a thing. I grew up on the Passion of the Christ soundtrack as a kid, and that was about all the exposure I'd had to worship. And that was until I went to this event organised by Proclaim Lismore, and for the first time I heard Lord I Need You by Matt Maher, and that was kind of the first introduction to worship music for me. And from there I started to find new bands that I liked and new artists that I liked, and from there I just wanted to write worship music. So advice I'd give to young songwriters is definitely to pray first. That's 100% number one thing that you should do, because God normally has a message much better than anything that we could offer. So by praying first and just inviting him in and inviting the Holy Spirit into the writing process, it makes it a lot easier for us as well. And God always has a message to share, and by opening ourselves up and opening the song up so that the Holy Spirit can speak, it means that there'll be a message that we can actually listen to and then give out to everybody else.